What's up, everybody? I am back again. I've been in a little bit of a mood lately. Um, for doing some videos. Been interacting with the fandom a little bit more, and I decided that maybe it's about time to potentially address some controversies within the fandom. Some of the ones that I think are actually undeservedly controversies, things that I think could rather easily be explained. It's just that, some people don't necessarily want to, or don't know how to, or just haven't gotten around to it yet. And honestly, some of these things are things that, even if, you did explain it, people just don't want to hear. But, need to be said they do. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. The first thing that I'm going to be covering is the strongest human in Dragon Ball. So many people, all right, so many people take umbrage with the fact that Krillin is declared to be the strongest Earthling in the franchise. That doesn't sit well with them for some reason. They just can't accept that somehow he is stronger than X, Y, and Z over here. Now, there are a number of reasons why that might be the case. Some people have grounded reasons, others have, frankly, reasons that don't really matter much in the grand scheme of things, such as he's smaller and he's a dork and I don't like him, that kind of thing. But we're not going to be talking about that because I'm not going to pretend that that's everybody. I want to present to you a very real reason why Krillin is the strongest Earthling. Specifically, why he's stronger than Tien, and why, in the context of this series, it makes perfect sense for him to still be stronger than Tien, even if Tien keeps training. Um, but real quick, I do want to knock something out of the way. I see people insist that it has to be the androids because they were human and they're cyborgs and not robots, therefore they count. Not really. And the reason why Toriyama specifically does not count them in any of his, statements is their power is not their own. They weren't born with this power. They don't use their internal energy to fire those beams you see them fire. They don't use that to augment their strength. It's an artificial source. It's not coming from within them. It's coming from another source. It'd be like if you strapped a big old energy cell onto your back and started shooting, you know, big old beams and whatnot. The power isn't with you. It's with the device you have. Sort of like with Iron Man. Anybody who got into that suit would have got into that suit and got it up and running. They'd have the same power that Tony Stark has, because it's not Tony Stark's power. It's Tony Stark's suit. He built the suit, but he is not the suit. Right? You following me? So that's why they're not counted. It is possible for them to potentially, increase their power, get stronger, because they are human, and they could actually start to, rely more on their own energy, which also, to me, insinuates that they could also probably learn how to sense other people's ki with enough training. But that's neither here nor there. Oob is another one that a lot of people like to cite as being the strongest Earthling. Um, I'm gonna say this. I'm not even gonna try to fall back on the whole he's a reborn Majin thing, which he technically is. I mean, that's Majin Buu's power within him, the original Majin Buu's power within him. But you know, whatever. He was born with it, so in a way it's his. But no, what I would say in that regard is that technically he has the potential to be the strongest Earthling. He is almost guaranteed to eventually become that, but he's not yet. Specifically because the only time he can really access his power is when he gets really mad enough and really pushed to do it. And when he does, it's not at all stable, and it's not like super powerful. Like Goku started charging up a simple Kamehameha, and the power from that and the sight of it, just seemed to freak him out. And it's what Goku even noted. Nobody's taught you how to use that power, so you don't know how to use that. And because of that, he does have the potential within him. He does. He has extreme potential within him, but he doesn't have full access to that power yet. In fact, because he was born with it, we don't know if he's only ever going to get as strong as Boo. Is his power going to be affected by that? Because he's a human now, does that mean that he can also train himself to get even stronger than he was when Boo was at his peak? I don't know. It's possible. But again, possible. Potential. Down the line. Not yet. As it stood at the end of that manga, I still think that Krillin technically would have had it, if only because, he knows how to use his power. Whereas Oob, has to get lucky and really push to even be able to tap into a little bit of it. But, to get back to the topic at hand. Why Tien is not stronger than Krillin? Why, even though he trains non-stop, is he not stronger than Krillin? There's really one real simple answer for this. Because the author said so. No. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, bad attempt at a joke. But no. That, honestly, technically, that is all the justification you really need. But I can understand why some people might, wonder how. First, let me take the feats into account. The feats that he performed. More specifically, when he took on, well, as people like to call him, semi-perfect Cell. We gotta look at the real reason why he was able to hold Cell back there. And we gotta look at things realistically. What you guys are trying to imply when you say that he, under his own power, held back semi-perfect Cell when no one else could, is that at that point in the series, Tien, with literally no time to train between when he got wrecked in one hit by Android 17 and that fight with Cell, somehow, inexplicably, gained so much power that he was stronger not only than the androids, but stronger than Piccolo. If you want to use the raw power argument, that is what you are essentially implying. And I think we're all going to be mostly in agreement that that's kind of ridiculous. Because there is literally no way he could have gotten that much power. I've seen a lot of people pull like random levels out of their rear. Like, he was at the same level as third form Frieza by this point. Oh, he was, at least as strong as the Ginyus because we saw him fight them in King Kai's world, and he won pretty easily. Ignoring the fact that that's filler, because it is filler, it also ignores the fact that, again, Krillin was actually out there getting battlefield experience, fighting. His potential having been unlocked, it began rising, constantly, exponentially. Vegeta even commented as much. He said both of them don't even realize it, but their powers have been rising rapidly, especially the boy, which of course was in reference to Gohan. But Vegeta could even sense that Krillin's power had been like constantly going up and up and up. It's the whole reason why he thought that Frieza, knowing the power Frieza had in his first form, between the three of them, they should be able to overpower him. I mean, think about that for a second. But beyond that, you have to look at how the technique that he used to hold back Cell works. The 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 tri beam, as it I'm just gonna call it that because I cannot pronounce the Japanese name to save my life. Or the Neo Tri Beam, as the video game fans insist on calling it. Um, it works by essentially literally creating a crushing, concussive force of psychic energy, of your energy yourself. Basically, Tien is sacrificing his life energy to make a giant wall and smash it on people. It is like the proverbial, for lack of a better term, 2 by 4. Only in this case, it's an entire row of them being slammed on you again and again and again. Think like in pro wrestling, the metal chair, only infinitely thicker and heavier and more painful. You know, um, that's essentially what that technique does, and it hurts him to use it. I mean, using it as much as he did, for as long as he did, which in actuality was not very long. When you read the manga and you look at the events going on around everything, and them being concurrent to this, he didn't hold him for too long. The entire time was just to buy 18 and 16 enough time to go hide. Tien knew that he himself didn't stand a chance in heck of actually beating him. The entire thing was a gambit to stall. And it was because of that specific technique. And it dang near killed him. It wasn't because he was somehow stronger than Piccolo at that point. He would have had to have, again, become, without even doing any extra training in the span of those chapters, those episodes, the strongest character in the Dragon Ball universe at that time, strongest known, I should say, for that to happen. And he wasn't. In fact, he actually was ready to pull out of the search and the trying to deal with the androids altogether to go get Chaozu and go home. Um, so I mean, we got to be realistic about that. We can't put his power up ridiculously high. He had an impressive feat, and it was a very noble self-sacrifice. And I'm not going to downplay that, but I mean, in the end, it was something that only stalled for time and didn't even actually hurt. So, just inconvenienced him. But back to the matter at hand. Um, Specifically, people citing that, Krillin didn't train near as much as Tien and then eventually stopped training altogether. Ergo, Tien has to have become stronger because he didn't quit training, and if he didn't quit training, then he wouldn't stop getting stronger. That is where your logic runs into a problem. Alright? Because in this series, people do have limitations. They have limitations and they have natural gifts. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's look at things comparatively between several characters for an example of natural gifts. When you look at Gohan, Gohan was born with like a massive, massive swell of power inside him that he did not have to train to get. He did not, it was already in him, he just didn't know how to access it. That is a natural gift. I mean, when you look at what Goku and Krillin had to do when they were kids to even get close to that level, Gohan was born extremely gifted in that regard. Just to start. But when you take a look at, people like Vegeta and Goku, Goku had to work like mad to go from an extremely weak child to even the level he was at when Raditz showed up. You know, Goku. But comparatively, like even when you compare Goku and Krillin when they met up, Krillin had been trained, you know, from childhood, from dang near infancy, at the Orin Temple as a Shaolin monk. And if you know anything about Shaolin monks and the Shaolin Order, that's no small thing. Okay, they are very dedicated and pretty rigorous in their training. And that's how he got to where he was at the age of 13. And that, again, it was no small feat because he was unnaturally strong. But Goku was about that strong. And Goku hadn't had too much super heavy training before his grandpa, unfortunately, was killed. He had spent years simply just going over what his grandpa had already taught him, you know, on his own on occasion out in the woods. And he was, you know, about as strong, in fact, a little bit stronger than Krillin was. Both of them, you know, were the same age just about. Um, but Goku had that much power, that much more power in him, without having to do as much work as Krillin did. All right. Comparatively, Goku and you know, stepping that up, Goku and Vegeta. Goku had to bust his butt to get to where he was when Raditz showed up. Vegeta was at a level above Raditz. Vegeta was pretty much at a level around where Nappa was as a kid. Okay, he didn't have to do that much super intensive training to get stronger. In fact, what really pushed him to finally start training himself was getting beaten by low class trash like Goku. Now, that's not to say Vegeta was lazy, that's not to say he didn't ever train, and that's not to say that he wasn't able to pick up new tricks along the way, because as we saw, he did. But that's what really pushed him. Getting beaten by Goku and then seeing Goku, you know, become the Super Saiyan. Between those two things, that is where Vegeta really started to push himself. For the first real time. But comparatively, look at those two and look at Frieza. Look at what Goku had to go through to get to a level where he could, you know, match Frieza. And then you come to find out Frieza never trained a day in his life. That is the strength he naturally had just by benefit of existing. And when he finally pushed himself to train for a while, he got scary strong. If he were to actually push himself to his fullest potential, who even knows how strong he could have gotten? For all we know, he may have actually been originally, potentially, the one to succeed even Beerus as God of Destruction. Who knows? I mean, that's complete speculation, but it could also explain why Beerus was so interested in him. But that's my point. Different people have different gifts, different limitations. Different people have to work harder for even a lesser result than people, you know, who don't have to work as hard. I mean, Vegeta could only train like once a week, and Krillin could go out there and train every single day. Do you think Krillin's ever going to catch up to Vegeta? No, simply by virtue of Vegeta's natural gift. I mean, he could sit back on his laurels and not do much of anything for the next couple years. And, you know, they're never going to catch up. Piccolo, same thing. You know, you're not really going to catch up to that. I don't necessarily think he expects to. But, you know, it's one of those things where it's like Piccolo, you know, Gohan, those guys, they have a naturally greater potential, a naturally greater gift. In the case of Krillin and Tien, it's the same thing. And what I mean by that, for a perfect side-by-side parallel, look at Chaozu. Alright? Tien and Chaozu trained under the same master. Trained for the same amount of time under that same master. They grew up together under that master. Which one of them was stronger? Even though they trained together with each other, they were each other's partner. Who wound up stronger? Tien. Why? Because Tien had naturally more potential than Chaozu, made greater gains than Chaozu. Chaozu still, to this day, helps Tien train. Do you think that Chaozu is somehow some beast? No, he's not. And we don't question that because we don't expect Chaozu to be some kind of beast because we recognize that he is significantly more limited than the others. Now, summarily, on that same note, let's look at Master Roshi. I mean, if this principle was true, if everybody is only as limited as long as they train, let's look at Master Roshi. When Master Roshi goes all out, he is significantly stronger than he seems, yes, but you have to keep in mind, he's not going to get much stronger than he is. Alright? Even dipping up to his peak, he can only maintain it for so long. But he has been training almost non-stop. And yes, he does still train. It's pretty obvious because his technique is still dang good when he's 200 years old at the start of Dragon Ball. I mean, look what he did in those tournaments. Trained for 200 years. And Tien, who was only in his early 20s at the time, managed to match him. Okay? Tien managed to match him. Piccolo. You know, blowing up the moon in one shot, whereas it took Roshi a while to charge up a Kamehameha and fire it. Yeah, he watched his students, all of them, eventually surpass him. Even though he had been, again, training non-stop for 200 years. If the idea that nobody has any limitations other than what they set for themselves, if the idea that keeping up with your training would cause you to constantly and continuously and consistently get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger unceasingly, then by that logic, not only should Tien probably be, you know, honestly as strong or stronger than Gohan by now, the level that Gohan's sitting at right now, which he's obviously not, but how much stronger then should Roshi be? Roshi should practically be a god in terms of strength. But he's not, because Roshi naturally has greater limitations than the ones before him. Roshi is from a time when humanity was just sort of discovering and waking up its hidden potential. His students, the humans among them at least, the Earthlings among them, have taken that to the next level. They are a new level of advancement. But he himself has gone about as far as he can go. Now, could he probably get to where, if he were younger and more and had greater vitality, you know, could he maybe get to where he could hold his, you know, full power form longer? Probably, maybe. Yeah, but would he necessarily get much of a higher power level than that per se? Would he get much stronger than what he is? Probably not. Because, again, Roshi has his limitations. And if eating that paradise herb is what allows him to regain some vitality and live longer, if he were to eat the whole thing and regain his youth, you know what? He probably could throw himself back into training, but he doesn't really see a point. And I believe that's because Roshi has realized that he's gone about as far as he can go. And, well, he kind of likes being the old sage. It gets him respect. But in terms of Tien, yes, that is why Tien, even though he keeps up his training, which, contrary to popular belief, he doesn't do non-stop. He does run a farm with Chaozu. That is why Tien is not the same strength as Krillin. It's why he's not as strong as he is. It's why he remains, and probably, barring Krillin having prolonged his lack of training, probably always will be not as strong. Now, as of the last episode, too, as of episode 76, I don't know how that has affected Krillin. I don't know now that he has shaken off that mental block. I don't know what happened to him there. I don't, because I'll tell you this, I think he actually came out of that even stronger than he was before. I know that he definitely had a significant physical change. His aura changed. The way his ki flows changed. And the way it was presented was that it had done so in a way that, made him even stronger than he had been. So, what that could mean, whether it's something that Tien can learn too, maybe? I don't know. But the it's just the foot stomping that I see. The constant insistence that that's wrong and it can't make logical sense in the series, it actually does. In fact, it makes more than logical sense in the series. It's consistent with how things work in this series. And some people might say, well, that's not fair, but you know what? That's life, too. I could go out there, I could train myself to play basketball really well, I could get really good at it, I could even be really good maybe in a city league. But no matter how hard I went out there and pushed myself, I know I'm not going to be, the next LeBron James. I'm not going to be the next Michael Jordan. I'm not going to be, a superstar. Because I was not born with the same amount of talent, natural talent, that those guys had. I could get really good at throwing a football. I am never going to be Aaron Rodgers. Because that man was born with far more natural talent than I have. That doesn't mean that they didn't have to work for it. That doesn't mean they didn't have to work to refine it. It just means that they naturally have a greater pool to pull from than I do. And that's just something that's gonna be a thing. I could really, really want to get good at, being a quarterback. I could really, really want to get good at playing basketball. I could work my butt off for it. And I still wouldn't be as good as they are. That's not to say they don't, but even if they didn't, I still wouldn't be as good as them. Certainly not unless they really fell off the wagon for a long time. But at any rate, folks, that's about all I really had to say about this. I'm hoping that maybe I made this make some sense for all you guys. I'm not trying to even, put Tien down. I'm not trying to discount how hard he works, because he does. It's an admirable thing. But, it doesn't inherently mean that he is entitled to or is going to hold the title of the strongest Earthling. And I know that people like to, I'm not even going to, well, I'll touch real quick. In terms of the whole, Tien's part alien, so it doesn't refer to him. Tien is classed by Akira Toriyama and in the Daizenshu as an Earthling, as are basically all the native creatures, the anthropomorphic animals, the monsters, of which apparently Tien's three-eyed clan is actually technically classed. They, due to the fact that they essentially had to live here, before they all disappeared, due to apparent assimilation, were considered Earthlings now. Tien himself is considered an Earthling. King Furry is considered an Earthling. So I hope that maybe, you know, maybe I helped you guys understand a little bit more. If not, I'm sorry. But I thought maybe that I should probably, speak on this. It was bugging me, sitting in the back of my head. You guys seem to like when I do videos talking about this stuff anyways, so, win-win, eh? But that is it for this time. I will catch you guys later. See ya.